Hello and welcome to yet another educational video by NewYorkSteelo, and today we're going to cover the hot topic of how to feed SPS corals. Now, about a year ago, I released a video titled Reef Aquarium, How to Feed Anemones and LPS corals. LPS corals being entirely different than SPS corals and have different demands when it comes to feeding and the such. And so I've since received massive amounts of questions on how to feed SPS corals. Now, LPS corals are basically large polyp stonies, with a large skeletal structure and large polyps sticking out of it, such as the hammer coral, the elegance coral, a frog spawn. Now, SPSs, on the other hand, have much smaller polyp extension and a larger skeletal structure. This being that LPS corals, because they have larger polyps, you can feed them meatier foods, mice and shrimp and the such, but when it comes to SPSs, you have to feed them smaller foods. They rely on plankton more so than anything else. Also rely heavily on water movement. The water movement must be strong enough to deliver that plankton to the polyp extension. And in this video here today, we're going to discuss the foods that I've been using for the past 3 weeks here. We're going to discuss also the feeding apparatus that I've been using for the past 3 weeks as well. And I'm also going to give you a quick illustration and a quick tip on how to really get your SPS polyps to really stick out. I mean, some of what I've discovered in the past 3 weeks is just downright amazing, and I'm going to share that with you guys. Now, do keep this in mind here. This tank, it's a young reef, and it's doing absolutely beautiful. I mean, you can see it with your own eyes. I've covered every detail of it, but I never fed my SPS corals. And there's a couple of reasons why. It is a possibility here for you to set up a reef where it's a full-blown ecosystem and it'll feed everything within the system. The fact that this tank has a deep sand bed, it's a continuous breeding ground for plankton, which once the lights go off, this plankton becomes suspended, and the water movement once again delivers that food to the polyps. Also, live rock in itself is a continuous growth of food for your corals and your fish as well. But the most important aspect of this setup, which feeds my corals, is the refugium down below. The refugium down below is lit 24 hours a day, and the fact that I use miracle mud, it's a continuous growth and production of phytoplankton, which feeds my corals day and night. This is one of the main reasons why my protein skimmers collection cup looks like a dark hunter green, and that is, the more phytoplankton that's being produced, it's being collected by the skimmer. The skimmer's going to try to remove anything that shouldn't belong in that water. And so I'm going to give you guys a quick illustration of the collection cup as well. Now, for more than a year, like I said, I haven't fed this reef, but I've discovered so much since then for the past 3 weeks since feeding the food. So we're gonna edit the video quickly here, and we're gonna move on to showing you the protein skimmers collection cup, some of the food that I use, the feeding apparatus, and I'm gonna give you guys a quick illustration here on how I feed my corals. So we will be right back. Okay, so this is the food that I've been using for the past 3 weeks. Now we're gonna start with what you see down here in the front, which is Julian's thing. This thing is just awesome. I don't know why they called it Julian's thing. It's a great feeding apparatus that you can use, great for extension, being able to go deep in there and feeding some of the corals that require this feeding, such as the sun coral. The sun coral being that it doesn't rely on the power of the sun, and usually you keep it away and deep down below. This feeding apparatus just works great, and I highly recommend it, guys. I mean, it's just great. We're going to take a quick close-up here of this feeding apparatus here, and you can see it extends all the way around, and down at the other end, it sucks up the food. Now, this one here is something that I've been using for such a long time to feed my my LPS corals. I do, however, feed my LPS corals. I give them some mysis shrimp, some brine shrimp on occasions and stuff like that. But if you can't get Julian's thing and you have one of these Salifert test kits that come with one of these needleless syringes, you can definitely use that to feed your corals. Now here is an example of the gunk collection of my protein skimmer. Now the lighting is not that great, guys, but this is actually 48 hours of gunk collection after feeding this food. And even without feeding this food, I would get this kind of gunk collection, and it would be a dark hunter green, which is the color that you're looking at here. And this is due to the continuous production of phytoplankton from my Refugium lit 24 hours a day. If you don't use Miracle Mud, you can dose some supplements to the system to encourage that growth of phytoplankton. One of the most important supplements to encourage that growth would be iron, but you have to be very careful with dosing supplements. You really do. You must follow the recommendations on the back of the bottle and ensure that you don't overdose, because if you do, you're gonna run into cyano and hair algae and God knows what other nuisance algae type of problem. But this is just an example here. I wish I had better lighting, but it is a dark hunter green type of color here. Now another food, or the first one we're going to talk about here, is marine snow. Now this one is already prepared, you know, and you have to keep it refrigerated. I found that using DT's phytoplankton is slightly a little better than marine snow, but they're both about the same. I don't have DT's phytoplankton, but marine snow will do the job for you. I mean, you can go ahead and dose it directly into the tank, or you can use the feeding apparatus to target feed your corals. And I'm going to show you exactly how to target feed in a few moments here. Now, Cyclopes is another great food for your SPS corals. But I do find that Cyclopes works best for your fish, more so than SPS corals, and great for LPS corals. You know, to feed your LPS, it's a great form of nutrition, but when you feed Cyclopes to your tank, your fishes are just gonna go buck wild. My clowns absolutely love it, and I ensure that I feed them some Cyclopes at least once a day. You know, I wanna ensure that they're really healthy. Now this feeding, this little blue apparatus here is just a little spoon that I got from one of the test kits, and it's that spoon that I use to be able to take out some of this food here from Coral Frenzy and mix it with the water. Now I'm gonna tell you this, during the first week of feeding, I was mixing all three of these products: marine snow, Cyclopes, and Coral Frenzy. But the past 2 weeks, I've discovered that all you need is Coral Frenzy. If you really want to go ahead and feed your SPS corals, I highly recommend you to get this food. This food is actually going to do it all for you. It's a mixture of so much food, and if I'm not 100% sure which food is in there, because I can't think, remember it off the top of my head, but you can do the research. It's got oyster eggs, it's a mixture of so many different types of food, and I think that this is all that you would need. All you need to do is just take some of this food. Oh, I'm going to give you guys a quick close-up here of what the food looks like here. And you can go ahead and mix it into this much water. Now, this is the amount that I've been using to feed my tank. But, let's talk about the feeding in general quickly here. If there's one thing that I do recommend you to do, is to make sure that you target feed the tank. There's two ways to do it. You can add this food directly into the tank and let the water deliver it to the SPS corals, or you can go ahead and target feed, and that's exactly what I recommend you to do. If you add it to the tank, it's just going to create lots of uneaten food. Your protein skimmer is going to be removing it, but what's left over is probably going to turn into phosphates in the system and eventually break down into nitrates and whatnot. So highly recommend you to target feed. I'm going to give you guys a quick illustration here on how to use this. Now, my tip to you is to go ahead and add just a little bit of this food here to the water column before you start to target feed your SPS corals. This is because if you add this food has a certain smell to it that it just encourages the polyp extension to just completely come out. And I'm gonna show you that quickly. So I'm gonna go ahead and add some of this food to the tank. You're gonna notice that it's a little bit cloudy here, and we're gonna do a close-up. I'm gonna show you how to target feed your SPS coral. So we will be right back. Okay, so now that we're quickly back here and we're looking at a quick close-up of the strawberry shortcake, if you notice, you're gonna see polyp extension that you never even probably thought was even possible with this coral, and that is due to the coral frenzy. Now, in order for me to encourage this polyp extension, like I mentioned before, I've added about 20 millimeters of the food, which has created sort of a little bit of a cloudiness in the water column and has encouraged this polyp extension to be present here. And I'm going to show you guys how quickly and easy it is for you to target feed this coral. Once you see that the polyp extension is present there, you can go ahead and take Julien's stain, suck up some of the food, point it in its direction. The yellow tang is already going to be excited because he wants to get some of that food, and it's as simple as just blasting one time a little bit of this food. That's it. It's microscopic. It happens automatically. The rest of the food, you can feed it to your other SPS corals. It's that simple. Now, do keep this in mind. SPS corals are not so much dependent on the plankton that they capture. Although the plankton helps, you know, they depend more on the power of the sun. The power of the sun is basically going to create energy for the zooxanthellae to create sugars and even feed your SPS corals, which is one of the reasons why I don't target feed them. However, they do have polyps for a reason, and they do capture phytoplankton, and so target feeding them, for those of you SPS freaks out there, or those of you who want to get into the hobby and want to try to restore a SPS coral that's not doing so well, you know, to a state of good health, it is recommended for you to target feed your corals. Now, also be very careful with the amount of food that you actually use. You know, this is important. I only feed this food every 3 days, and you know, it's working out fine for my system. I haven't seen any growth of cyanobacteria, but there are some people who have reported that they have experienced higher than normal growth of nuisance algae, and for those people, I imagine, or I'm assuming, that they're overfeeding the system. Hope you guys have found this video informational. Many more videos to come, guys. Rate my videos, give it a thumbs up, you know, show that support. And of course, I will post another video here soon. This is NewYorkSteelo signing out. Peace.